We often start building without thinking about the human experience that is playing out over there. So understanding what are the behaviors we need in place, what is good for brain health. You're right, brain health is not a well understood term.
If we're talking about physical walls and things like, oh, how do we change it? We don't even have to start with moving walls at the beginning. We can start by changing some of our habits. Do small tasks during a certain part of the day, big tasks when it's quiet later in the afternoon. It doesn't require any physical change. Like, there are ways to do it without costing anything.
Yeah.
That's step one. Step two would be then now maybe when we're more aware of how we work, how we think, how we rest, you can start rearranging your environment.
And that's a phenomenal point. I think starting with awareness of what is it that we are doing as humans in the city. The first thing is rediscovering the potential of a city. When you look at the city from the lens of brain health, what it can do for my cognitive health, then you'll discover things that you didn't discover before. So the hidden potential in the places we already have, a place to go and rest, a place to go and meet other people, a place to do creative work. I think rediscovering our museums and our libraries and places that we go to intellectually be curious. That's the first part. Like, the cities are in place, but in olden times, we actually did design for full body, brain, social health in some ways. And in today's highly digitized world, we have forgotten some of it. So I think you can rediscover. And then you can do tactical interventions. You can do small things that re-emphasize what's already in place. And then think about the big things that you could do at a city planning or a neighborhood planning or a building planning scale. And then I choose to go to the places that get me there. And we need to make those places available, affordable, and most importantly, appealing. So they can be used in the way that maximizes our own potential. Learn what you want your brain to do. And then think about what's the best place to do it. And so there were 5 affordances that we identified, that the workplace needed to have places for focus, places for collaboration, places for ideation, places for socialization, and then places for rest. Then, as a person, you have to know when to go to those places. So one of the things we tend to do today is we multitask, but we make our workplace multitask. The workplace doesn't have to multitask. I should be able to move. When I want to focus, here is where I go in the office. When I want to rest, I go out into the balcony. When I want to ideate, there's a whole ideation space that's there. So if we move to where there is the maximum affordance, you can get that to happen. So you provide choices, but also a pathway to those choices through behaviors.
It makes me happy when I'm up here and I see someone sitting out there with their laptop open.
Yeah.
That means they know there are choices. I don't want them to sit at the desk all day. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's not. And we also encourage them to stop for a few minutes every hour. The short answer is choices.
Yep.
I have so many choices when I come to the office. If I want to socialize, I can. Quiet space, we can.
Good design creates choices that can be really evident to the user. That's why we call them affordances, right? So you need to know that choice is available to you and then need to be empowered to use that choice. You do not need more space.
Yeah.
We are creatures of habit. We are pattern seekers. And once we see a pattern, we just stick in that pattern and we get addicted to that pattern. So the reconditioning, the breaking of the addictions we have to very pure brain health behaviors right now, that is the hard part. So through the environment, we can absolutely go very far. We can show the choices, but you need to design policies, you need to design processes, you need to design technology. All 3 of those have to go alongside with the environment itself, with the place itself, so that you can have that powerful behavior change. Yeah. But that reconditioning takes time. Like we are pattern seekers, we follow patterns, so breaking a pattern takes time. The research we did on brain healthy workplaces, and then we did a lot of research during COVID. We did come up with a number. We came up with the hybridity that everybody is striving for there does seem to be this number 3, like 3 days, that you have to be 3 days continuously somewhere to be able to really maximize the potential of that place and get behaviors in place overall. So when you do one thing one day, another thing another day, the conditioning doesn't happen and can be very distracting. In Singapore, everyone comes in 5 days a week.
They come in
right?
5 days because there's a socializing aspect of it. They go out to lunch every day together. So I realized the more socialization that happens in the office,
Yeah.
the more they come back. So it's kind of like a loop. They come back, they're happy, and more and more people come
Yeah.
back, and you don't want to miss out. When we send pictures of how much fun the food we're eating, it's just that food is the magnet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they come.
And that, again, it
They
goes
come
back to
back.
culture, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the culture that you
office
create.
culture has
Yeah.
has a lot to do with it.
The other thing, not everybody has the same kind of place at home to
Yeah,
work. And so the
exactly.
office actually provides an equitable environment and range of choices. But those who have extraordinary places at home, they struggle with a different level of choice.
Yeah.
So even for that rhythm and consistency, we are finding is really important to condition your brain in a certain way and not just keep ping-ponging this way and the other.
Yeah.
One of the things that COVID took away from us was transition time. The in-between time was something that was actually quite precious. It could be stressful, yes, that I'm traveling for so long, but it gave me time between home and work. When I was walking from a meeting room to another meeting room, it gave me time to reset my brain. In the digital world, everything collapsed. We go from one Zoom to another Zoom room to another Zoom room. We lost that transition time. So one of the things that we've learned is actually make the most of your transit time. That's the time that you allow your brain to reset. That's the time where you say, okay, I'm not home. I'm not at work. I need to really think about what do I need to get done.
time.
It's me time. And it's really important reflection time. So again, that intentionality, awareness of what it is, and then the intentionality of how you use that time. And celebrate the in-between time. There isn't enough of it. So celebrating that time and making the most of it and going from one state of being to another. That transition time, being intentional about it, that can be very good for brain health.
I save those times for maybe some text that I haven't replied, or sometimes I save it to play games. My head needs to hit some dinosaur every 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
I do that.
We don't talk enough about the power of play. Play is very good for brain health. Just playing, doing something with no agenda, just interacting. Playgrounds actually are enriched environments. There's a framework for enriched environments, which are environments that have social, cognitive, sensory, and motor stimuli. And the research shows that enriched environments can actually grow new synapses in the brain. Like, they can really aid neuroplasticity. But playgrounds are a great example because you go to playgrounds, you meet other people, you play, and in the action of play, you not only move physically, but you have like some of those puzzles, things to interact with, things to figure out. And that gives you the level of cognitive challenge that's very, very good. So we need more playgrounds. Workplaces need more playgrounds. I think society needs more playgrounds, honestly. And I think if we had more intergenerational playgrounds, which you're starting to see like a trend towards right now, that would increase. There is a digital addiction that you're fighting with, that physical playgrounds are not used enough.
And we talk about a brain health study where we need to pause. That's also the purpose of the pause, isn't
Yes.
it? Right?
Yes, the 5 minutes of rest that you take, the 5 minutes of doing nothing, and they actually tell us in the brain training that do 5 minutes of nothing, don't task switch.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're working on the computer and then you start going and folding laundry.
Doesn't count.
It doesn't count. The doing nothing allows you to make those grooves in your memory to remember and to reset. And sometimes to remember, you need to reset. Just reflect, just sit. You don't have to even meditate. Like, you don't have to put a task on yourself, to just sit in a place and be. Because when you go to the next task, your brain is still engaged in a different type of task, but it's still engaged. So giving your brain just time to really do nothing, which they also say is sometimes the hardest thing to do. We're not used to doing nothing anymore. I would say that Singapore has a lot of the affordances in place. Like it is rediscovering Singapore from the lens of brain health, that you have a lot of potential because you have socialization built in. You have food built in, which is a very, very important part of the culture. It's easy to move around. You have mobility built in. The access that you have to the botanical gardens, to the museums, to places of intellectual curiosity and creativity. Like, we don't talk enough about the importance of the arts, and not just viewing arts, but creating arts in the city. Those are really important too. So I would say Singapore is actually a great example that if we were aware of the potential of it, then it could be an amazing prototype brain healthy city overall. I actually think sometimes cities in the US can struggle with it a little bit because they're so far, right? And the soul of the city needs to be rediscovered because it's easy to go into suburbia and go into your big homes, and you struggle with that. So sometimes the density and the vibrancy that is there in high density cities has all the key affordances. We just need to slow down and rediscover and then make that evident to the residents so that you can use those. All the examples in Singapore, like putting the policy, process, technology, place together, it comes together in a culture. So culture, I think, is the cohesive mechanism about it. Culture is both input and output. Like, you can't infuse a culture. You do all of the things in place and a culture emerges from it.
The subculture of the office is the same. We sometimes need to just get out of the way and let the employee and the staff discover what's there.
The distinction often between culture and policy is policy gets confused with policing.
Yeah, we're not
policing
police.
never works, but if you put policies in place that promote culture, the policy becomes invisible. The culture becomes visible. And that's so important. So that's a lot of what you see. It's because there are policies, you have processes, you have places, you have technologies, but what you see is the culture. That comes out of it so strongly. In the living lab that I mentioned in Atlanta, after we did the brain training, and we also had the place affordances in place, so again, a little bit of the change engagement, a little bit of learning, awareness, and then place, we saw an increase in the amount of focused tasks that were completed per day. We saw an increase in what employees said about the energy that they felt and the level of cohesion overall. So a lot of our focus is, when we do things with intent, we want to make sure that we are also getting to impact. And that impact at the end of the day is what moves the needle.